the House come to order? Mr. Clerk.
Aloha and good morning. Today's invocation will be delivered by Representative Corey M. Chun. Will the members who wish to participate please rise?
Please stay seated. Good morning, members. For this invocation, I wanted to share a story about someone I knew back when I was at the American Cancer Society, and her name was Tammy Miura. And she was a Pearl City High School graduate, cancer survivor, two-time cancer survivor, and a volunteer at Camp Nui Nui, which is a camp that hosted children with cancer, just so they could escape the pressures of the cancer diagnosis and be encouraged by the other kids. So Tammy volunteered at the camp. She also volunteered at the American Cancer Society, and she also volunteered at Kapiolani Hospital for Children in the oncology ward. And I got to know Tammy through her volunteer work. And then, through her experience, she wanted to further her education and actually be a counselor, a children's youth counselor. She got into graduate school, and she was going to attend Gonzaga University, which is my alma mater. So, I had the chance to share with her the harsh winters that I had to endure coming from Hawaii. And, I was really happy for her to see her taking that path in life. After her first semester, she, unfortunately, cancer returned. She had to come home. And I found out later that she never made it back. Cancer eventually took her life. And so, you may be wondering why I'm sharing this story about someone who I didn't know very well. But it's because I think of her. And even though she passed away 10 years ago, I think about her and what she was trying to do in a life cut short. And what my message is this morning is that, when it comes to tragedies like that, it's very easy to become numb or indifferent. But what I want this body and this state to do is not forget and to continue caring, because that's the only way we can solve these incredible problems that we have to deal with and move this state forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Chun. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Ayu, Mr. Alcos, Ms. Amato, Ms. Bellotti, Mr. Chun, Ms. Cochran, Mr. Evslin, Mr. Ganadin, Mr. Garcia, Mr. Garrett, Mr. Gates, Mr. Hashem, Mr. Holt, Ms. Hussey Burdick, Ms. Ichiyama, Mr. Ilagan, Ms. Kahaloa, Ms. Capella, Mr. Kila, Ms. Kitagawa, Mr. Kobayashi, Mr. Kong, Ms. Lachika, Ms. Lamosao, Ms. Lowen, Ms. Martin, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Matayoshi, Ms. Matsumoto, Mr. Miyake, Ms. Mizuno, Ms. Morikawa, Ms. Nakamura, Mr. Nakashima, Mr. Nishimoto, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Peruso, Mr. Pirik, Ms. Poepoe, Mr. Quinlan, Mr. Sayama, Ms. Souza, Mr. Takayama, Ms. Takenouchi, Mr. Tam, Mr. Tarnas, Mr. Todd, Mr. Ward, Mr. Woodson, Mr. Yamashita, Mr. Speaker.
Present.
Mr. Speaker, all 51 members are present.
Members, on item 2, reading of the Journal, Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, may this matter be deferred.
So ordered. Item 3, Mr. Clerk, are there any messages from the Governor?
Mr. Speaker, there are none.
Item 4, Mr. Clerk, are there any Senate communications?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, if you and the members will turn your attention to the addendum to today's order of the day. We are in receipt of a communication informing the House that the Senate has disagreed to the amendments proposed by the House to the noted Senate bills. We are in further receipt of communications returning the noted House bills, all having passed third reading in the Senate.
For the disagree motion, Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to disagree to the amendments made by the Senate to the noted House bills.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussion, members? If not, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. Members, are there any introductions? Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, regarding the importance of what we're going to say today, certainly it doesn't reflect by the massive numbers in our gallery, except for two outstanding people, Henry Curtis and Kat Brady, two of the people who are looking forward to prisoners as well as cleaning up the environment. Henry and Kat, would you please stand and be recognized as those watching over us in this final debate?
Okay, members, we're on part 1, consent calendar. We need a motion to suspend the rules. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules of the House in order to consider certain Senate bills for third reading by consent calendar.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. For the third reading motion, Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 1 through 3 and that the accompanying Senate bills as amended pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, members, there's no discussion on these items which have been agreed to by this body for placement on the consent calendar. So with that, we'll be taking the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 1, STANCOM report number 1818-24, SB number 3220, SD2, HD2, Rep. Capella votes no.
Representative Garcia.
On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye.
All right, members, have all votes been cast? Okay, if so, said measures pass third reading. Members, also please remember to submit to the Chief Clerk the list of Senate bills on the consent calendar for which you will be inserting written comments in support or in opposition. Please submit your list by adjournment of today's floor session. We'll be taking a recess subject to the call of the chair. Recess. With House come to order, members, we have a late introduction. Representative Martin.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to welcome to their House of Representatives the Kailua High School Surf Riders. This is a group. Please stand and be recognized. These are doing a leadership training. These are our student council members, and they are accompanied today by a 30-year teacher from Kailua High School who is now retired but is still coming back, JJ Furr, and then also Sherry Hanoa. And thank you. Welcome to your House of Representatives. And Speaker, may I request that their names be entered into the journal?
So ordered. All right, members, we're on page 4, Part 2, Ordinary Calendar. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 4 through 9 and that the accompanying Senate bills, as may be amended, pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, discussion members on page 4, SCR 1816, Representative Nakashima.
Mr. Speaker, I have a floor amendment to offer.
Mr. Clerk, have copies of the floor amendment been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 3 have been distributed.
Representative Nakashima.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the floor amendment.
Representative Siama.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Is there any discussion on the proposed floor amendment? Representative Nakashima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment being made to SB 2342 encompasses the additional language from HB 1991, which was not passed by the Senate. This is the ride share bill, and in order to maintain its integrity in conference, we would like to add this to another bill related to transportation, SB 2342, SD2, HD2, to be able to continue the discussion.
Is there further discussion on the floor amendment? If not, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. Members, please note the 48-hour notice for this measure. Okay, we're back on page 4, SCR 1817, discussion. 1821. 1824. Next page, 1825. Representative Matsumoto.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, at the appropriate time, if we can go back to 1824,
Yes, please proceed on 1824.
with reservations.
So ordered. Okay, we're back on 1825. Representative Pirik,
In opposition.
please proceed.
This bill would basically create a task force that would eventually lead to universal health care for the state of Hawaii. Let's look at Vermont. Vermont in 2011 passed a single-payer health care plan. 3 years later, their Democrat governor basically said, let's get rid of this program because it would require 11% payroll tax for employers and a 9% income tax to finance. So we ask ourselves, who is going to pay for the probable eventual recommendations from this task force to create universal health care in the state of Hawaii? The taxpayers. Does District 39 want to pay for this? I don't think so. I'm voting no for Ewa Beach and Waipahu.
Or is there further discussion? If not, 1827. Representative Ward,
Speaker, I rise in strong support.
please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that allows the drop-dead date, if you will, for the $600 million that we gave to DHHL, and I first should express my appreciation to everybody on this floor that helped that $600 million to be done, and I thank you, sir, for putting me on the Watchdog Committee. I'm happy to report that there's probably 4,000 to 6,000 people are going to be taken off the wait list because of that funds. And as a fail-safe measure, this bill says, look, Kali, if you don't spend the money by June 2024, which is coming up very shortly, this bill allows it to go to June 2025, which I think is very admirable, doable, fair, and for the sake of what they are doing in terms of so many properties they're buying and so many houses they're building. This is a good bill. It's a fail-safe bill, basically technical, but it's substantive because they are delivering on that $600 million that we gave them. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Holt,
Thank you, Speaker, and strong support.
please proceed.
You know, this is a great bill that we're passing to make sure that the funds will be expended. I think we're on pace to get it out on time, but just to make sure that we can get the best use of all of these funds, I think it's important we pass this measure. We've also come up with a new problem, though. The department has done such great work that they need more money. So I look forward to working with everybody to ensure that we can get these houses built out as, you know, Department of Hawaiian Homes is the fastest, most efficient way we can build housing, and we all know what a housing crisis we're in. So for those reasons, I'm in support. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? If not, 1828, 1830. Next page, 1831. Representative Garcia.
Reservations.
So ordered. 1833, 1835, 1836. We have a proposed floor amendment. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the floor amendment.
Mr. Clerk, have copies of the floor amendment been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 4 have been distributed.
Representative Nakamura.
I should have said this one previously. Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the floor amendment.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Representative Nakamura.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. This floor amendment is to remove a section that was added in the last committee that repealed the 2050 date by which all cesspools in Hawaii are to be converted. There are over 83,000 cesspools throughout Hawaii, emitting 52 million gallons of raw sewage into our environment. In 2017, the legislature approved a bill to enact this law that requires all cesspools to be converted by 2050. This was introduced by, at the time, Representative Jarrett Ke'ohokalole. Yet almost 10 years later, very few conversions have taken place. And there's only about 300 conversions a year, where we need to get to 3,000 a year. This deadline is critical to just having a goal so that everyone can work toward. And we do acknowledge the need for the Department of Health to step it up. We acknowledge the need for our county governments to step it up, and homeowners as well. But this floor amendment we do not need this floor amendment, the 2050 date, conversion date, to be repealed at this time. Thank you.
Is there further discussion, members? If not, we'll take a voice vote on the floor amendment. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. All right, we're back on SCR 1833. Any discussion? Oh, please, members, please note the 40-hour notice for SCR 1831. We're on 1833. Any discussion? 1835. 1836. We have a floor amendment. Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, I have a floor amendment.
I'm sorry, we're on 1837.
Or 1837.
Ward.
You're ahead of me, which usually I'm ahead of you, sir. I have a floor amendment to offer.
Mr. Clerk, have copies of the floor amendment been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 5 have been distributed.
Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of the floor amendment.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, discussion. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, sometimes we don't name the bills properly, but I would call this bill the piracy on the high seas. This allows us to confiscate ships owned by Pasha, by Matson, and any others that are suspect, and it's a good cause, of having a lot of invasive species. We know the rhinoceros beetles are wreaking havoc on our environment. The red fire ants, and we sympathize with the neighbor islands. Coqui frogs have basically taken over. But Mr. Speaker, this is the very blunt instrument by which we're doing. Look, this is America. We don't confiscate people's property. This one says in the First Amendment that I'm putting through here is that you cannot do this for 100 days. If you can't find out what's going on in 100 days, you don't know what you're doing. So the amendment says, hey, 20 days. If we're going to confiscate your ship, 20 days, or your airplane, or whatever. And in that confiscation, remember the supply chain that we experienced during COVID? If we think that was bad, put all these Matson and Pasha ships to inspect them for 100 days is going to be costly. And that's the other amendment. This says you don't pay until 100 days. And my amendment says, hey, as soon as you take the ship away or the aircraft away, you pay them immediately. None of this waiting and doing it. And the last part is saying, you know, this cannot be something arbitrary and capricious. It's got to be scientific-based, peer-reviewed research that says you are in violation of this and we're going to take your property. Mr. Speaker, I have in my family the history of pirates, and some of you don't know the history behind why they call it the boogeyman. The boogeyman is when they come up and they suddenly take your ship away from you. The equivalent of this is what this bill is doing by what otherwise in the testimony, Matson and all the shipping people are saying, why do you want to do this? There's a better way to get to the invasive species than by this confiscation. This is basically anti-American, a piracy on the high seas. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I submit this for consideration. Thank you.
Representative Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition,
Please proceed.
this bill is to address the invasive species issues that we've been facing as a state across our communities. In District 45, we've lost majority of our coconut trees due to the coconut rhinoceros beetle. Now it is attacking our mango trees, and many of our businesses, our residents, and just our way of life has been impacted by the lack of effort and focus on getting results relating to invasive species. This bill does not just only address ships, but this also addresses nurseries, businesses selling products that are contaminated, for example, with little fire ants. This will also give the Department of Agriculture the tools they need to get a hold of the issue of invasive species in our communities, Mr. Speaker. And I think that we also have to recognize the economic impacts that not taking this issue seriously, that if we remain doing the same thing we've been doing, we won't see the results that our community members have been asking for. So I ask our members to oppose this, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Martin.
Also, in opposition to the floor amendment.
Please proceed.
I just wanted to reiterate what the chair from the Agricultural Committee was saying, that this bill will give some teeth for the Department of Agriculture to be able to quarantine product. We've had problems in my district with nurseries knowingly selling infested products, and it's actually wasn't illegal. There's some current emergency rules that were put in place that are temporary to allow the Department of Agriculture to do more, but we need permanent legislation to keep the movement of those products from happening within our islands and within our state. Thank you.
For rebuttal, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. Also trying to get the amendment. I think people have missed the point. I totally agree with the last two speakers, Mr. Speaker. We've got to get a leg up on these fire ants. I mean, why did coqui frogs take over the Big Island? Because we were slow on the uptake. This is good, but it goes too far. The point is, if you're going to confiscate a Matson or a Pasha ship, don't take it 100 days to keep it unused. This bill's, my amendment says, give them 20 days. That's 3 weeks, Mr. Speaker. If we can't go through the ins and outs of a ship in 3 weeks, we don't know what we're doing. The other thing is, it says you can't compensate people until 20 days are over. No, It should be immediately, as soon as you stop commerce in these huge ships that cost millions of dollars, why should they take the big loss? We're going to wait 20 days before compensation. That's not fair. So the point is, we've got to stop the invasive species, but the comments are saying we've got to stop the invasive species. My comments are, let's be fair to those who are running these transportation, particularly the ships that run in and out, that supply us the food, that give us sustenance, who keeps this place alive, Mr. Speaker. Let's not punish them. Let's give them moderate incentives to do what we want to do to get rid of the invasive species, but don't throw the baby out with the bath. Don't throw the ship out. That's why this bill is piracy, and it's unfair to the shipping industry. Thank you.
Okay, members, we'll be taking a voice vote on the floor amendment. All those in favor of the floor amendment say aye. All opposed say no. All right, so the motion fails. We're back on the main motion discussion on SCR 1837. Representative Kila.
Mr. Speaker, reservations.
So ordered. Representative Purick,
In opposition.
please proceed.
This bill basically gives the governor too much executive power to seize vessels on the ocean. He can basically say, yep, that boat has some pests, it has some organisms that we don't want. Let's go seize the boat, let's take it for 100 days, and I'm in control of it. That's a lot of power for a Hawaii state governor. It sounds more like a king or a dictator. I don't think this bill is good. It gives too much power to the governor. We have people like Matson submitting testimony that 90% of our goods in the state come through boats. So that's our cars, that's our food, and things that we rely on. So I don't believe we should be giving the governor power to start seizing commerce like that.
So further discussion, Representative Lamasau.
With reservations.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Yamashita.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rarely speak on bills, but I'm speaking in support.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So one of the things that I think we need to consider why we need drastic actions on invasive species is because, right, as we all know, the federal government requires us to expect everything when we leave the state. At the airport, we put our bags through, we expect everything. But coming into the state, right, so for the federal government is protecting the rest of the nation from us, but they are not protecting us from the rest of the nation. So to be able to protect us, we need to put in these kinds of measures to, I'm not saying this is fully vetted, but I just believe that we need to do something drastic just because the federal government doesn't support us from things coming in, but they do support us from sending invasive species to them. Thank you.
Representative Kahalua.
In support.
Please proceed.
May I please adopt the words of the Chair of Finance?
So ordered. Representative Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same request.
So ordered.
I just want to clarify that this bill will only take effect after a department has declared the emergency for biosecurity and with the approval of the governor. And it specifically mentions when this action would trigger, and that's when there is an outbreak or an occurrence of a pest or prohibited or restricted organism that has the potential to cause significant economic or environmental loss if the pest or organism becomes established in the state based on scientific evidence or peer-reviewed research, Mr. Speaker. And for those reasons, I stand in strong support. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion, members? If not, 1838, 1839, 1840. Next page, 1841, 1842.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Kila.
On 1842, reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Ayu.
Reservations as well.
So ordered. Okay, 1843. Representative Amato.
Thank you, Speaker. In opposition, brief comments
Please
and
proceed.
a wish to submit written remarks.
So ordered.
The House draft was initially deferred by Water and Land with good reasons. Regardless of the description stating avoiding a disproportionate impact on a specific ratepayer or county, deep diving into the details, that description seems ingenuine. I am concerned that this bill will end up being shouldered by consumers, and it has several flaws. Securitization would allow HECO to sell unpaid utility debt collections from broken Maui families to finance this. This is strike one. But more importantly, the bill does not preclude HECO from passing these costs to ratepayers. So regardless of description, it actually can make customer bills higher. That is strike two. This bill effectively blocks the PUC from regulating HECO on this issue. That is strike three. This bill is out. This bill does not serve the people of Hawaii. It serves and benefits the HECO shareholders. It is time we stand up for the rights of the middle class. Please join me in voting no. Thank you.
Representative Ward,
Speaker, in strong support.
please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I think there's two people in this room who were here when Iniki hit Kauai. Everybody paid for Kauai. Everybody chipped in for Kauai. We never a nickel and dime saying, well, because it's your island, you guys pay the big share. The point is, if we want HECO to survive and we don't want a mainland firm to come and take over, this bill is one of those steps that we need to secure HECO. Thank you.
Representative La Chica,
Mr. Speaker, in support.
please proceed.
I am in support of the section in this bill that would, which I appreciate that our Chair for Consumer Protection had made, which would establish a process for electrical utilities to develop and submit wildfire protection plans to the Public Utilities Commission. So most recently in my district, Hawaiian Electric decided to implement changes that affected my district through power outages as a result of in response to the fires, where a disruption would trigger an automatic shutoff to power, which affected about 2,500 residents in my community. This was done so without any type of community engagement, any type of communication, and this happened over several weeks, multiple times during 1 week in the evening hours, affecting several residents, several hundred residents. So for those reasons, I believe that there should be a process for any type of community-wide changes, even if it's we want to support wildfire protection planning. We want to prevent these fires from happening, but it shouldn't come at a cost to not notifying our community or not involving them in any drastic changes that would affect their day-to-day.
Further discussion, Representative Bellotti,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support with reservations and brief comments.
please proceed.
Supporting with reservations based on the comments of the speaker from Kihei, and I just hope as this moves forward, attention to making sure that ratepayers aren't too adversely affected will be noted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Capello,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition,
please proceed.
can I adopt the words of the representative from Kihei as if they were my own?
So ordered.
And a brief comment. At the heart of this is a bailout bill for HECO at the expense of families across the state. My electricity bill is already high enough. So for those reasons alone, I cannot support this bill.
Representative Gannon,
With reservations, Mr. Speaker.
so ordered.
I'm concerned that we are going to be voting on this bill prior to a report delivered to us by the Office of the Attorney General regarding how the fire was spread and apportioning some version of essentially blame. I feel like this is a bit premature. I wish that we could hold it till about the middle of the summer, but we can't. For those reasons, reservations.
Representative Cochran,
Thank you, Speaker. I stand in strong strong opposition of this bill. For me, in real brief comments, it gives an open line of credit to HECO. And at this time, as you can imagine, the town of Lahaina really has no trust. There is proof of mismanagement, negligence. They had currently a fire protection plan in place from the 2019 Hurricane Lane fire incident that happened in the exact same spot, practically. They were given $95 million to roll out a plan, and it obviously did not happen, so this fire occurred. And this also, we as a state will codify and put into law that we're giving them okay to raise rates up to 5%. So there's numerous reasons, and I also want to, may I request submittal of further written comments and also 1,227 testimonies in opposition from the Lahaina fire victims that were given to the Finance Committee but never been recorded or acknowledged. So I would like to have permission to enter all those names into the journal.
Representative, the chair will allow submission of written comments, but will take the matter of the testimonies under advisement.
Thank you.
Representative Souza.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Alcos.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Pruitt.
In opposition.
Please proceed.
As previously discussed, this measure would basically allow the electric company to potentially raise rates to the residents of Hawaii. This is somewhat of a response to the Lahaina fire. So if we're going to raise the rates on the people who are using electricity, there's probably some sort of reasoning behind that. The expenses are getting high for the electric company. Here are some of those expenses for the electric company. Their CEO makes $575,000 a year. So the expense of the electric company is that they pay their CEO $500,000 a year. Here's another expense they have. $210,000 a year goes to the director. I guess the rates of the electricity need to go up because their pay is pretty high. The Hawaiian Electric Industries hired a utility bankruptcy expert as a CFO, and their payment to this person was $1.5 million for a 15-month job. So I guess this is another expense for the electric company that they want to pass on to the consumer by increasing their rate. This doesn't sound like a good idea. I'm voting no.
Representative Lowen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
Please proceed.
Thanks. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this bill does and what securitization actually is. So securitization is allowing a ratepayer a fee on electric bills to back a loan. And by allowing that mechanism, you lower the cost of borrowing for the electric utility. Sorry, I have a lot of different things to say. And I think the thing that we have to remember is that our electric utility is currently in a really bad financial situation. Their credit rating is, in the pits. They're going to have to borrow money regardless. And ratepayers are going to pay for that regardless. So although I have concerns about the current version of the bill, and I think it needs to be tightened up a lot, the alternative, this isn't, do we support a fee on bills that would help the utility to borrow at a lower rate? The choice is between borrowing at a lower rate that ratepayers pay for or borrowing at a higher rate that ratepayers pay for. There's not a future in which the utility doesn't need to borrow money, and that includes whether they are sold to another entity or whether they declare bankruptcy. This bill isn't paving a pathway. It's not a bailout bill, because frankly, my personal opinion is this is probably not enough to prevent, potentially a bankruptcy proceeding regardless. And this also won't prevent another entity coming in to buy it off. So that's not what it's about. That's just a misplaced understanding of what it's doing. So, I think that's the important thing to remember. I would also say that there were amendments made in its second committee, in Consumer Protection Committee, without conferring with the lead chairs of Waterland and EEP, that I think really weakened it. The wildfire mitigation piece that the representative from Mililani mentioned was actually just in another bill because two bills were combined. But a bunch of amendments were made to that to make it go from being required to be a docketed process to a non-docketed process. And this would mean there's less transparency and less communication with stakeholders in the public and communities. And in addition, in that committee, I think that there were added back in provisions that allowed for automatic increases if the estimated cost of implementing the wildfire mitigation plans was more than what the PUC had previously approved. There was this provision where it could automatically be approved to be, X% higher without it having to go through the process, which the consumer advocate opposed, and we had taken out in its prior committees. That got added back in. So I think there's a lot of ways this bill needs to be made better, and even what we passed out of Waterland and EEP, I think, needed to be strengthened. Because while I do think that we should approve this securitization mechanism, and definitely, we absolutely need the piece of this bill that requires wildfire mitigation plans, to be done by the electric utility through a PUC process, which is what has been implemented in California, in Oregon, prior to some of their big fire events. And we need to have that backstop in statute here. We also have this opportunity to empower the PUC in their approval of whatever the securitization agreement is, to empower the PUC to really take a close look at HECO and to look at things like, are they appropriately looking internally at their high-level salaries? Are they looking at selling off assets? Is it something where we should push to have other ownership structures considered, like cooperatives potentially for the neighbor islands, for example, where you would have access to cheaper capital just by being a rural cooperative. You would automatically have access to cheap capital and cheaper borrowing, and so that could be a benefit to ratepayers potentially as well. You could look at whether the PUC should push for separating distribution from generation, and have the opportunity to have the PUC consider these things and decide what's in the public benefit. So this bill is really an opportunity to empower the PUC to do those things if we choose to do that. This isn't a time, I think that the fear that, we're going to have electricity, we're going to have an electric utility, and I think the idea that if we don't do something, somehow the lights are going to go off, that's not really the debate that's on the table.
Yield my time.
Thank you. And so, I think these are just things to keep in mind as we move forward and to try to understand what actually this bill is doing. And then the other question of the Maui fire victims, I think, is something that has to be considered separately. But whether we should empower, I think the amendments that were proposed on this bill that some people have been talking about on the floor today would look at having securitization as a mechanism be used to fund damages being paid to fire victims before looking at utility infrastructure and having that be a ratepayer-based fee statewide. And I don't think that for damages to victims that should be the first go-to before we look deep into HECO and what liability they can, put on shareholders and on their own holdings. So, with that, I'll stop, but permission for written comments in the journal.
So ordered. Representative Nakamura,
In support,
please proceed.
I'd like to adopt the words of the EEP chair as if they were my own.
So ordered.
And I would like to also clarify that for the representative from Lahaina, that the testimony that was submitted to the Finance Committee prior to the hearing were, I am told, have been upgraded, added to the legislative website. So just wanted to put that on record. Thank you.
Further discussion, members? Representative Matsumoto,
With reservations.
so ordered.
And permission to insert written comments into the journal.
So ordered. Okay, we're on 1844. Representative Lamasau.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, at appropriate time, can we go back to 1842
Yes, please proceed on 1842.
with reservations?
So ordered. Okay, we're back on SCR 1844. Any discussion? Representative Hussey Burdick.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Capella.
Same request.
So ordered. Okay, next page, 1846. Representative Purick.
In opposition.
Please proceed.
Short-term rentals are a vibrant part of our economy. $6 billion of our economy come through short-term rentals. 48,000 different jobs in our state come through short-term rentals, and these short-term rentals are mostly owned by local residents. This bill would give the county power to eliminate short-term rentals. A lot of people submitted testimony against this measure. This is, to some extent, a response to the Lahaina Maui fires, and I appreciate that, that heart in wanting to eliminate some short-term rentals to clear up space for long-term rentals for the Lahaina victims. That's an admirable goal, but when you do that, you're hurting so many other people in the short-term rental industry. Again, $6 billion for the economy, 48,000 jobs.
Representative Ward.
Speaker, also in opposition.
Please proceed.
In addition to those benefits of the 6 million into the economy and the 40,000 jobs, Mr. Speaker, this is a demographic target on the back of our kupuna. Many of these people who have their own home, renting out a room, do that so they can survive. Social Security and a room that they rent is basically it. So I would say, if we want to help our kupuna, and we have a kupuna caucus, we have a special place in the Office of Aging. Well, this is something that brings them a monthly income, and it's not invasive. It's in their own home. They are there as kind of the house mother or the house father, and it's probably the least invasive. And even the HTA, I think a study said that not only do they bring in the money, but we don't have enough hotel rooms in Waikiki to keep people housed when they visit us. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I think the vote for this bill is against our kupuna, but for keeping the kupuna employed as short-term rentals. I think it's the best thing that we could do, is to help them out by giving this added income. Thank you.
Representative Quillen.
In strong support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
I will never understand why we spend so much time in this building worrying about people that have at least 2 homes. Isn't our job as legislators to worry about people that have no homes? With your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take you on a little journey through history. Let's go back about 6,000 years to the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley, the birth of civilization, Babylon, okay? A group of nomadic pastoralists decided that they were going to domesticate wheat. They had discovered the secret of a food source that renewed itself every year, and they didn't have to wander through the desert with their camels or their goats or whatever they had. Okay? So when they domesticated wheat, they realized that they had to build a city. They had to build a place for them to live. They weren't living in tents anymore. They were living in cities and houses with walls. So fast forward to today, and we think about the concept of archaeology, right? We have archaeologists, not like the Indiana Jones archaeologists, but regular archaeologists. And we have a lot of incredible technology, Mr. Speaker. We can use LiDAR to look at ancient cities, and we look at how they're laid out, and we can discover from analyzing the midden heaps what types of businesses were there, where were the homes, where were the slaughterhouses, where were the businesses. And even 6,000 years ago, in the very first cities that our civilization ever built, the slaughterhouse would be on one side of the city and the homes would be on the other. What I'm trying to say, Mr. Speaker, is that zoning as a concept is integral to human civilization. And what this measure does is it gives the power of zoning back to our county governments, where their elected officials will make decisions about where it is appropriate to have hotels, where it is appropriate to have short-term rentals, and where it is not. All this bill is home rule, Mr. Speaker. It's an opportunity for our citizens, for our county governments, to make the same decisions that human beings have been making for 6,000 years. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the National Geographic argument. Representative Tam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, with reservations and permission to insert written comments.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Alcos.
A no vote.
So ordered. Please proceed.
Looking at this vacation rentals, you know, it's good to have, like, first of all, I'd like to adopt the words of Hawaii Kai, Representative Ward, as my own.
So ordered.
And a brief statement is that one of the biggest investment we can do here is real estate, invest our money into real estate. Of course, we want to invest our money, we want to buy one home, as the previous speaker is, we want to find one home. But we want to find a second home or a third home if we can give back to our families, if we can give back to our kids, and that they'll be okay and set off. Because right now, if my son had to go and buy a house today, I honestly can't understand how these kids can get out of high school or college to afford one home today. They cannot. But I got to buy it 20 years ago to make an investment so that they can have a home and to find our kids to get someplace to live. Now, that's local investors, I'm okay with it. But foreign investors, outside investors, I would like to see a stop on it. But for local investors to find a second home or a third home to invest into our kids, because investing into a bank ain't making much money, but investing into real estate, it helps. So those reasons, I'm a no.
Representative Martin,
Thank you, Speaker, and strong support.
please proceed.
While Maui has highlighted when vacation rentals are permitted, what a large percentage of the housing stock they can take over, this has been a problem in my community on Oahu for decades. And it's something that the county has tried to deal with, and actually the state law has made them unable to rein in the vacation rentals issues over the duration of what is called a short-term rental. And so this, as the previous speaker from the North Shore mentioned, it allows home rule. And we know that counties are closer to the situation on the ground and are better suited to address and make decisions over that. And so this allows them to implement what they have been trying to do to decrease the number of vacation rentals that are residential homes that have been taken out of residential use and put into resort use at a time when we have a housing crisis. And we are investing a lot of our state taxpayer dollars into creating affordable housing. When we have that housing stock, taking it back will help. Thank you.
Representative Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's really unfortunate that some people
Support or
characterize.
opposition?
In support.
Please
Thank
proceed.
you. I think it's really unfortunate that some people characterize our housing market as small businesses. And, I don't think we have, it's up to the counties to decide what they want to do with this. But, it was noted in testimony that 27% of vacation rental owners own 20 or more units. And I don't think that's what we would like in our state. So for those reasons, in support.
Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Speaker. I stand in strong support, and I'd like to adopt the words of Representative of House District 47 as if they are my own.
So ordered.
And as a former Maui County Council member, I have all the confidence that the respective counties will make the best Pono decision that affect their direct people at their homes. So this is, again, giving home rule back to counties, and I totally support it. Mahalo.
Representative Gannon.
In support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
May I adopt the words of the representative from Chinatown as if they were my own?
So ordered.
We actually very much agree on this. With brief comment, Mr. Speaker, I think many of our constituents want us to go much further than this bill. People have been asking us as elected officials to stop out-of-state homeowners from purchasing homes entirely, which is in violation of the federal constitution. I think this allows the continuation of a democratic process and a conversation with communities about how to keep local families here.
All right, is there further discussion? Representative Ward, second speech.
Second time. Contrary to the Indiana Jones thesis from the gentleman from the North Shore, I think anthropologists would say one of the care from the very beginning of time was for the older people. And Mr. Speaker, my point is this should be left to those who are aging in place who need extra income. I agree with all the others who have said, hey, we don't want a proliferation, but we want to carve out owner occupants. I hope in the sense of in the end, when we do the Senate and House negotiations in the conference committees, that some of that will come up. But of course, we have to control tourism. We don't want the big mainland takeover, 20 houses by one particular, or how many units that they may have. But the point is, there are those who thrive and survive on this who are in a demographic that is very, very precarious. And because of that, it would be worthy to have the amendment to make this an owner-occupant. And particularly, as I said earlier, this is a kapuna-based issue. Thank you.
Mr. Representative Cochran, second speech.
Yeah, thank you. Second and final. I also have strong confidence in Maui County. I can speak on their behalf as I was one of the creators of the short-term rental bills there. So they are definitely, I have confidence there's a distinction between bed and breakfasts, which are owner occupied, and also short-term rental and TVRs. And so I believe the bed and breakfasts with the owner-occupied type units were passed through first because it made best sense. And then the rest came along, which I always was wholeheartedly not in support. So I really believe that the county is going to look at that first and foremost because they are a local people. They're actually people who live in their homes and they rent side rooms or cottages or what have you for that extra income to subsidize, themselves. So again, I am in strong support and I have every confidence that the Maui County in particular, I can speak for, will be making the right decisions. Mahalo.
Representative Evslin.
In support.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are facing a dire shortage of housing in Hawaii, which is the primary contributor to our housing crisis right now. Part of that shortage is because we are building far too few homes in Hawaii. But also, of the homes that we're building, many of those are being converted to vacation rentals. As I've said here before, island of Kauai, 1 in 8 homes is a vacation rental. The island of Maui, I believe 1 in 7 homes is a vacation rental. And as long as outside investors can purchase property in Hawaii and make a whole lot of money by renting those out to visitors, we are going to have a really hard time solving our affordable housing crisis. And the purpose of this bill is merely, as has been said many times, to give the counties the authority to, as they choose, phase out short-term rental units. Units with owner occupants could be excluded from that. Short-term rental units in resort areas could be excluded to that, but the counties need the power to determine how to do this on their own. And to the notion that local people are benefiting from this, TAT data for Kauai shows something like less than 20% of vacation rental units are owned by local residents, right? The primary beneficiaries of vacation rentals in Hawaii are mainland investors. That needs to end. Thank you.
Is there further discussion, members? If not, we're on SCR 1848. 1849. Representative Garcia.
In support.
Please proceed.
I voted no on this on second reading and throughout committee, but I am very thankful that some amendments were made in the JHA committee to define exactly what exigent circumstances are, which is very important to make sure that we're not in violation of the 4th and 14th Amendment, as there is precedent that what's been happening here for a long time violates the 14th Amendment. So with the addition to this bill on page 1, it defines exigent circumstances to mean, quote, based on specific and articulable evidence that there is reasonable cause to believe. So thank you for the amendments, and I will now be voting yes.
Okay, 1850. Any discussion? Representative Perrick.
In opposition.
Please proceed.
Parents should be involved in the medical care that their children receive. Why are we expanding access for children to make medical decisions without parental supervision for kids that are only 18 years of old? Their brains don't fully develop until their 20s. Minors need to be encouraged to navigate these potentially uncomfortable conversations about sex and sexually transmitted diseases. While there are some young people in very unfortunate situations, this bill is worded in a way that would negatively impact thousands of families. This bill is to allegedly address marginalized youth in broken family situations, runaways, homeless. But shouldn't we be putting more focus on helping these people mend with their families versus encouraging secrecy among them? 14-year-old boys are in the category of 11 to 15-year-old boys, and those are the main perpetrators of sexual assaults. So if this bill is to allow a 14-year-old little girl or boy find out if they have received a sexually transmitted disease or to get some sort of family planning care without mom or dad knowing, how about we focus more on the cause before it, the perpetrators, the sexual assaulters, versus just saying, all right, the solution is let the 14-year-old kids get these medical services without mom or dad knowing about it. I'm voting no.
Representative Lamasau.
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Bellotti.
In support.
Please proceed.
With comments. I would, I'm in strong support of this, and I wish that the words that I were to speak next were my own. But the testimony before the Health Committee that was the most persuasive to me was by someone who actually works with treating many youth who live with HIV. Mr. Kekoa Kealoha, before the Health Committee, stated, quote, "Young people continue to represent the largest growing demographic of people affected by sexually transmitted infections, HIV among them. Working for nearly a decade in HIV care and prevention, I have been the one to deliver devastating news to too many people. For every person who has learned he or she had HIV, hepatitis, or STIs when I administered a test, I see missed opportunities for prevention. The thing is, clients don't come to see people like me because they want to. They come because they have to. They bring their traumas with them, often trauma in what leads to potential exposure to HIV, STIs, hepatitis, and more. I have frequently been the first person these folks have said anything to about their traumas. We could talk about parental rights and how in an ideal world, parents should be involved in their children's medical care, which I suspect is some of the opposition to this bill. That's my own language. But quote, "The reality is that parents aren't involved when their children decide to have sex. They don't decide for their children to be assaulted. Some of them don't know their child is gay, bisexual, lesbian, transgender, queer, or otherwise identified. And worst of all, some of them won't support their children. The young people at greatest risk for HIV acquisition are those who have uninvolved, uninterested parents who will not support healthful decision-making. This bill is for them." Telling someone she or he has HIV is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. It's much more difficult to work one-on-one with people living with HIV who have no support system, whose families have turned their backs on them, ejected them from their homes, and refused to acknowledge their humanity. It's even harder to sit with a client, disclose their status to their family, and watch the emotional response take over. I pray none of you experience that, and I would like to ask you to think about those people who will not have access to life-saving medication, end quote. Mr. Speaker, this bill only allows for the expansion of prevention, life-saving prevention, to diseases that kill, like HIV. We can't often say that a bill will save lives, but this bill will save lives. In strong support, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ganaden.
In support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
When voting on this bill, I am conscious of some of the history of the United States during my lifetime. The way that under the presidency of George Bush, AIDS and HIV treatment was significantly expanded here in the United States. And later on, during the presidency of his son, George Bush Jr., AIDS and HIV treatment was expanded significantly throughout the world, particularly in the African continent. Mr. Speaker, the age of consent here in the state of Hawaii is 14 years old. That means 14 years old means that individuals are having sex. They are engaging in this kind of behavior legally. In the time that it may take for a 14-year-old to an 18-year-old to speak to a guardian or a parent, they are missing prospective, important medical decisions and medical care which may save their lives. For that reason, I am voting yes.
Representative Matsumoto.
In opposition?
Please proceed.
And permission to insert comments into the journal.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Capella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support.
Please proceed.
You know, I had a floor comment prepared, but in the time that we've discussed this measure on the floor, I've decided that I wanted to share a story instead. And we're all moved in this body by individuals in our communities or individuals that we come across who move us to take action. And one of the people that really moved me into this building was the very first trafficking survivor that I ever worked with. She was 13 when she was first trafficked. And she had been trafficked for 3 years on the streets of Waikiki. She's a local girl. And when I met her, she was 16. In those 3 years that she was trafficked, she had been raped over 10,000 times. By the time we finally met her, and by the time I finally got a chance to meet this incredible young woman, she had contracted, she had tested positive for HIV, and she eventually passed away from AIDS. She was 1 day shy of being free for an entire year from being a trafficking victim. If a bill like this would have been passed, she might still be alive today. This bill, currently existing in state law already, minors can consent to medical treatment, but this bill is about prevention. We want to make sure that we can prevent their deaths. We want to make sure that we can prevent STDs. This bill truly does save lives, just as our health chair said. Thank you.
Representative Tam,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support?
please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I support this bill because the state of Hawaii has put forward a plan called Hawaii to Zero, which plans to end the HIV epidemic in Hawaii by 2030. This bill is in line with those plans and will actually help us reach those goals. As previously mentioned, this bill also saves lives. Currently, minors can consent to testing and treatment, but they cannot consent to prevention. My question is, why are we waiting till the worst case scenario when we get sick or potentially die that we decide to act? And finally, we often talk about parental rights, but what about minors who don't have parents because their parents turned their back on them simply because their child confided and trusted in them to understand who their true authentic selves is, only be tossed out on the street? I'm sure a lot of those kids would love to have parents to talk to this about, but unfortunately, that's not the case. This bill is for them. This bill allows them to have the preventative treatments to save their lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Purick,
In
second
opposition.
speech. Second speech.
A lot of discussion has underwent in this building so far about this bill, and we're talking about life versus death. So we're conflating secrecy with life. So if the 14-year-old child doesn't tell their parents and goes gets this medical procedure, their life will be saved. The parents are causing death because the parents are preventing them from getting these medical services. That's what this body seems to, some of these members seem to be arguing. The argument is being used that there are some parents that are throwing their children out in the streets, that they will die because they don't believe them, they don't accept them. How many parents are doing that? Can we get a number? Okay, so we're going to create a law that affects all of the children in Hawaii, all the parents in Hawaii, because of some anecdotes. I'm voting no on this bill.
Is there further discussion, members? Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Speaker. I stand in strong support.
Please proceed.
And access to prevention is life-saving and very critical. I was told by Maui AIDS Foundation just a few weeks back that they tested a positive HIV result in over 2.5 years. It is preventable. It is treatable. So it's something that we should not be testing positive in any way, shape, or form in this day and age. But unfortunately, we did. And it's been many years prior that people were safe and clean and protected. So I'm in huge support to have access to the services. Thank you.
Representative Alcos.
With reservations.
So ordered. Please proceed.
A little bit confused. I'm for parents' rights, but I also want to save that child or that kid if they got AIDS or some kind of disease, and time has to act right away, but would love to get the parents involved, so I'm with reservations. Thank you.
Representative Gates.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ayu.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Further discussion? Representative Martin.
In strong support.
Please proceed.
With HIV, there is treatment, but there is no cure. It's a lifelong treatment, and it doesn't deal with all of the symptoms of the disease. So the only real strategy we have is prevention, And prevention is a public health measure. If somebody is not infected, they can't spread it. And so that's really our only way to manage and hopefully get rid of this disease. No vaccines have worked. So I stand in strong support for everybody who needs this prevention medication to get access to it, regardless of what their age is, regardless of what their parents' position is. Thank you.
Representative Nakamura.
May I call for a recess?
Take a recess, subject to the call of the chair. Recess. Well, let's come to order. Members, is there any discussion on these measures before we take the vote? Any discussion? Okay, if not, Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, with the exception of SB numbers 2342 and SB 2513, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 7, Stand-com report number 1837-24, SB number 572, SD2HD2, Rep. Kong votes no. On page 8, Stand-com report number 1843-24, SB number 2922, SD2HD3, the following vote no. Amato, Cochran, Gates, Hussey Burdick, Capella, Peruso, Poi Poi, and Quinlan. For Stand-com report number 1844-24, SB number 3344, SC2HD2, Rep. Poi Poi votes no. On page 9, Stand-com report number 1846-24, SB number 2919, SD2HD2, the following vote no. Kong, Poi Poi. For Stand-com report number 1850-24, SB number 3125, SD2HD2, the following vote no. Kila, Kong. Thank you.
Representative Garcia.
On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 4, SCR 1816-24, SB 2342, SD...
Representative Garcia, that's deferred for 40 hours.
Oh,
Could be a Thursday vote.
Starting on page 5, SCR 1825-24, SB 2285, SD2 HD3, Reps. Garcia and Perrick vote no. SCR 1830-24, SB 2553, SD1 HD2, Reps. Garcia and Perrick vote no. On page 6, SCR 1836-24, SB 2...
Representative Garcia, that measure is also deferred for 40 hours till Thursday.
Okay. Page 7, SCR 1837-24, SB 572, SD2 HD2, Reps. Garcia, Perrick, and Ward vote no. SCR 1838-24, SB 2413, SD2 HD1, Perrick votes no. Page 8, SCR 1843-24, SB 2922, SD2 HD3, Reps. Garcia and Perrick vote no. Page 9, SCR 1846-24, SB 2919, SD2 HD2, Reps. Alcos, Garcia, Perrick, Souza, and Ward vote no. SCR 1848-24, SB 2560, SD2 HD2, Perrick votes no. Page 9 still, SCR 1850-24, SB 3125, SD2 HD2, Reps Garcia, Matsumoto, Perrick, and Ward vote no.
All right, members, have all votes been cast? Representative Poi Poi.
Page 9, SCR 1846-24, SB 2919. I would like to change my no vote to a yes vote. That was a mistake. But I rescind my green slip.
Okay,
Thank
so,
you.
so ordered.
Speaker.
Representative Garcia.
Reading off on page 4, SCR 1817-24, SB 2170, SD1, HD2, Perrick votes no. And on page 4, SCR 1824-24, SB 2556, SD2, HD3, Garcia and Perrick vote no.
Okay, members, have all votes been cast? Okay, if so, said measures pass third reading. Members, could we take a recess subject to the call of the chair? Recess. With all come to order, members, we're on item 6. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Senate bills listed on pages 10 through 12 pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Is there any discussion, members, beginning with SB 2948 on page 10? Representative Pirik.
In support.
Please proceed.
This bill provides low-cost housing options while conserving undeveloped land and infrastructure spending. This is repurposing of older commercial buildings and is often significantly less expensive than building new. I'm in support.
Okay, SB 3202. Representative Pirik.
In support.
Please proceed.
This bill provides affordable housing Affordable housing is one of the top issues facing our state today. This bill seeks to address that issue by providing more housing options in the same square footage that is available in our state.
Any discussion, members? Representative Onishi.
Yes, reservations, please.
So ordered.
Speaker.
Representative Ward.
Speaker, in opposition.
Please proceed.
First, to greatly thank the chair of Housing for taking the teeth and the bad stuff out of this bill, for taking out the monster homes, taking out 3 or 4 or 5 ADUs, a great revision. The unfortunate thing, and according to my district advisors, is they're not sure what it really what the words really mean, and it's a little confusing and a little convoluted. For those reasons, for an abundance of caution, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to vote no. And hopefully this thing won't morph back into its original form when we go to conferences. Thank you.
Representative Bellotti.
With reservations, thank you.
So ordered. Representative Chun.
Mr. Speaker.
Reservations.
Reservations. So ordered. Representative Kobayashi.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Matsuyoshi.
With reservations, and I just want to thank the bill introducer for the amendments made.
Representative Siyama.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Poi Poi.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Alcos.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Garcia.
Same request.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, SB 582. Next page, SB 2725, SB 3068, SB 2831. Any discussion? Okay, if not, next page, Representative Husty Burdick.
So sorry, at the appropriate time, can we go back to SB 2725?
Okay, let's go back to SB 2725, Representative Husty Burdick.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Okay, we're back on page 12, Representative Nakamura, SB 3289.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Senate Bill number 3289, SD1, HD1 be recommitted to the Committee on Finance.
Representative Yamashita.
I second the motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Representative Nakamura.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. With all of the fiscal constraints that we are facing today, with the Maui wildfire expenses.
You're in support of the motion, correct?
In support of the motion. The upfront FEMA expenses that we will not be reimbursed for many, many years. The need to address affordable housing, both short-term and long-term on the island of Maui, and infrastructure needs within Lahaina. We really need to make that our priority this session. The need for hazard pay, the need to, and all of the competing needs that have been set aside because of the Maui wildfire priority. Need for affordable housing to deal with the growing homelessness crisis throughout our state. Need to address all of the mental health needs. We need to find ways to address this concern about the transfer of wealth, but this may not be the time to do that. With all these other competing needs, let's focus on the needs at hand and address this. And I think we have a lot to learn from the families who are experiencing the transfer of wealth, but we need to focus on what our immediate needs are at hand, and therefore I support this recommittal.
Is there further discussion, members? Now we'll take a voice vote on the motion to Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we take a roll call vote.
Second the motion.
Okay, members, there's been a request for a roll call vote on the motion to recommit. All members in support of the motion of a roll call vote, please raise your right hand. Mr. Clerk, is there a requisite number of members in support of a roll call vote?
Mr. Speaker, we count 5 members.
Okay, we'll be proceeding with a voice vote, members. All those in favor of the motion to recommit, say aye. All opposed, say no. The motion carries. We're back on the main motion. Is there any discussion on these measures?
Point of order, Mr.
Representative
Speaker.
Garcia.
I would just ask that when you take a vote, to leave some time for those to respond by saying no, because there are members here who are casting a no vote. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion on the measures before us? If not, we'll take the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the exception of SB 3289, all majority members vote aye, with the exception also on page 10. Stancom report number 1746-24, SB number 3202, SD2HD1, the following vote no. Garrett, Hussey Burdick, Kong, Martin, Nishimoto, Peruso, Takenuchi. On page 11, Stancom report number 1781-24, SB number 2725, HD1, the following vote no. Capella, Peruso, Poi Poi. For Stancom report number 1783-24, SB number 2831, SD1, HD1, the following vote no. Ayu, Beladi, Garrett, Kila, Lamasao, Poi Poi. Thank you.
Representative Garcia.
On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 10, SCR 1746-24, SB 3202, SD2 HD1, Rep. Ward votes no. On page 11, SCR 1783-24, SB 2831, SD1 HD1, Reps. Garcia, Perrick, and Ward vote no.
Members, have all votes been cast? Okay, if so, said measures pass third reading. We're now on announcements, item 7. Are there any announcements, members? Representative Onishi.
Thank you, Speaker. Today I have 2 announcements. First, tomorrow at 11 a.m. in room 309, we will be having the FESPAC Commission will be giving a briefing on the upcoming FESPAC in June. Lunch will be served. This is only open to members of both the House and the Senate. And on Friday at 1 p.m. in room 423, there will be a certificate of appreciation presentation to Admiral Aquilino for his service as commander of Indo-PACOM. Thank you.
Representative Capella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If it's possible, I'd love to do a late introduction.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery today, I'm really excited and grateful for some of the incredible economic justice advocates who have come to be here with us today. I have Will Carone, Nate Hicks, my office manager, Chris Caulfield, Nicole Wu, Kim Coco Iwamoto, Cameron Hurt, Christy McPherson, and I'm so sorry, but I know she's an amazing housing advocate with Appleseed. Thank you all for being here, and welcome to your House of Representatives.
Are there further announcements? Representative Takayama.
Mr. Speaker, just a reminder to members that my office will be collecting women's clothing for donations to the YWCA's Dress for Success program. So encourage members to use tomorrow's recess day to collect gently used women's clothing for donation to women who are seeking a second chance in life. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, Representative Moy call for the motion to adjourn.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 12 o'clock noon Thursday.
Representative Garcia.
Speaker, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon Tuesday, Thursday.